Yeah.
Both Justin and Kim are,
I'll make a larger signature.
I can be it now.
What was the
Does
magic
everybody
sauce?
who's not the cat?
Oh, you got it on his computer, I see.
Tim has paper copies, though.
Hey, I wouldn't do that for
I was
Keegan.
trying to figure out.
Oh, God, today was
I was trying to
Saturday.
figure out.
You're laughing, but I know you're serious.
The top secret codes are in there. Hey, Jim, the top secret codes are in. I wouldn't let anybody else look at them other than you.
It's like
Yeah,
being married twice.
yeah, uh-huh.
Justin, do we need to wait for Kim?
You guys can go ahead and get started.
Jim, you're all set, right? You're
Sure.
good? Okay.
Do it.
She's printing off a,
She's bringing some down for you, but that'll be it.
Good evening, everyone.
I need a copy.
Welcome to the July 11th, 2022 Warsaw Plan Commission meeting. Approval of the June 13 meeting minutes, please.
Mr. President, I have reviewed the minutes. If there are no further questions or comments, I move to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Jim Gast. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone dissension? Thank you. Unfinished business, Justin?
None.
Thank you, sir. New business, 0702-2022, preliminary and final for the Lily Pad Cove subdivision. Justin, could you give us the facts, please? Kim, we're on.
Let Kim give the agendas here. She needs.
The minutes were approved.
while we're waiting, Mr. President, I'll let you know that the council did approve on first reading the daycare ordinance that we looked at last time. So we'll have and that was a first reading public hearing, then we'll have a second reading. But just wanted to let you know, and they appreciated the thoughtful questions that you'd asked ahead of time and had answered from this whole commission. So thanks for your diligence and good questions at that time, because it made the council's job a lot easier that we had been so thorough. So thank you.
So noted, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Justin, please proceed.
Yeah, so the preliminary and final plat for the Lily Pad Grove subdivision has been submitted in a timely fashion and reviewed for its conformity to the subdivision control ordinance. The proposed plat meets the development standards for a subdivision within an R2 zoning district. This plat is a simple subdivision to create one lot and one block with an average size of 0.42 acres. Utility access, ingress, egress to the site will be unaffected by this proposed subdivision. Since this subdivision does not include any additional public infrastructure, I recommend that you grant approval for the preliminary and final plat for the Lily Pad Cove subdivision.
Thank you, Justin. Before we open it to the public, any questions from the commission?
Well, I have one. I know what a lot is. I don't know what a block is.
There we go.
So,
That's the question. You're
So-
not the first to ask.
okay.
So believe it or not, you guys see these quite a bit, probably more than you realize. Most of the time, they're created to house retention ponds or detention ponds for a site. Typically, that's what they're used for. They're just not a lot that you would build on. But in this instance, and the petitioner has decided to create a block here where they would intend to plant, do plantings and leave open as open space near the lake. So, and they could fill you in maybe on more of the intention behind that, but that's the understanding for why they would create that.
Yeah, just along those lines, I would think, my understanding is the covenants would define the usage of the said block. And so I guess we'd want to understand what the covenants will say along those lines of the block.
What is the advantage to doing that as opposed to just leaving it part of his lot?
I don't exactly have that answer for you right now.
Could be taxes. You know, there's a lot of different reasons why somebody might
That was exactly my reaction.
be inclined to do so, but you'd have to have a discussion with the county and make sure that, you understood all the rules involved with why, what those blocks count for and what covenants they might need.
So you're saying there's a different tax rate for block property as opposed to residential?
Potentially,
property?
yeah.
Okay.
And I would assume then basically it would stay that way in perpetuity until a
Somebody could-
new
I mean-
owner would come and,
Somebody could replat that. You
Yeah,
know,
ask to
if somebody
replat it.
purchased the property from Aaron or a couple years later, they want to recombine, then they could, so.
Any other points or questions? Thank you. Any others? Thank you, Justin. All right, with that, we'll open it up to the audience. Is there anyone who would like to speak on behalf of this petition? Anyone in dissension of this opinion or petition? Closed to the public. Any further discussion?
Mr. President, if there's no further discussion or comments, I'd move to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Jim Gast. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any dissension? Now, that was for the preliminary plot.
since we have a unanimous vote, I'll make a motion that we suspend the rules to approve the final plat.
So moved.
I'll second.
Seconded by, all those in favor? Sorry.
Aye.
Any in dissension?
And I'll make a motion that we approve the final plat.
Second.
So moved and seconded by Rick again. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone in dissension? That carries unanimously. Thank you.
Aaron, do you want to get some information about the covenants? I mean, is it, did we skip over
No,
that?
I'm okay with it. I feel like that might be something that would, in the future on these things, it might be appropriate to know some of that. But I feel like we have an understanding of what the plan is here. So, I'm satisfied.
Any other points or discussion? We'll move on to the next item. 0701-2022. Applicant is Dale Custer. Justin, can you read us the facts, please?
Yes. So the petitioner for the Alta Vista subdivision is requesting to subdivide a 71.39 acre tract of land into 89 lots with an average lot size of 13,000 square feet. Preliminary plat for this subdivision has been submitted in a timely fashion and reviewed for its conformity to the subdivision control ordinance. Sanitary sewer for this development will be extended from Corridor Drive and will enter the site from the south. Water will be supplied through wells. All development activities within the subdivision will be required to adhere to any applicable state or local regulations regarding development activities in a designated wetland. I recommend that you grant approval for the preliminary plat for the Alta Vista subdivision.
Thank you, Justin. Any questions from the commission before we open it to the public?
Does this, Mr. President, approval or disapproval, follow the same line as the BZA where there's a set of criteria that we have to go by? For instance, if all the criteria are met, we're doing.
So for these, we're looking at lot sizes, just general layout. It's kind of spelled out, but it's less intensive than a final plat. So for the final, we're looking at grading, drainage, those type of things. But it wouldn't be, our ordinance actually spells out if it does adhere to an R1 zoning or whatever zoning district it's in, if it adheres to those lot size requirements, setbacks, then it should be approved. It's a lot different than a variance where you're kind of at the will of the.
Okay, and your recommendation, it says preliminary and final approval. Are you trying to?
Oh, did I say that? That it should only be preliminary. If I
Only
said final,
preliminary.
that would
Okay.
not be the case.
Sorry, I thought he only said preliminary.
Well, he may have said that, but the writing on here says,
Are you looking at the?
maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm
Where it
sorry, I'm
says
looking at
for
Wilcox's. My bad.
attachments,
Yeah,
it says
okay.
preliminary.
I was gonna say, that's not correct.
Yeah, there's a big surprise, huh? Okay.
All right, we've got that covered. With that, we'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone who'd like to speak in favor of the petition?
I just have questions.
Yeah. So I'm glad she did that instead of me. Anyone would like to speak in favor of this petition? Okay. Now, we will go to those that have questions and possibly would like to maybe not say something flattering about this petition.
What information do you we need?
Yeah, you need to talk into the mic, give your name, under decorum, we've got to be civil about this, so the press can hear you.
Okay. My name is Marcia Cook, and I live at 3019 East Old Road 30, which is next to Alta Vista subdivision.
Welcome to the Plan Commission meeting.
All right. My first question is, or comment, because of the loss of nature and natural views and privacy, are there any provisions for a buffer barrier for the properties to the east of the Alta Vista addition?
Justin, would you like to comment on that?
We don't do buffering between residential districts, so this is R1 and it would buffer against other residential. So even if we did require a buffer, the homeowners could come in and just remove the landscape if it was put there. So we don't require that ever for residential.
Will the Alta Vista addition be totally residential with no opportunity for commercial?
Correct.
Okay. Are you having an HOA, homeowners association?
That would be up to the developer. I haven't heard. Okay.
You do plan to? Okay. What considerations do you have for the traffic, the increase of traffic? I live there, and sometimes 5 to 10 minutes to get out right now. And with that addition of homes, that's a busy road now.
Yeah, and that's something we get every time there's a new development in the city. We get that question. It's kind of counterintuitive, but a lot of improvements on roadways are started or initiated because of the volume of traffic and traffic counts. So let's say your road has 7,500 cars a day now. With this development, if that went up to 10,000 trips per day down that road might be a candidate for greater funds or greater improvement because of that. So it's always painful when you have those growing pains of the city when you put in a new development near a road, but the increased traffic is a reality that we have to deal with, and then we have to advance the infrastructure too.
It's a definite reality because 30, that old 30 from new 30 all the way to 13, it's a busy road. And we used to have the children, they could ride their bikes out there when they were younger, but I wouldn't put them out there now. It is really very busy.
And we're working on bike paths and different things, but we have to look at each area as
Sure.
it develops.
Hopefully keep that one on the list.
Yeah, for sure.
The average valuations of the homes that are being built.
Price point?
They're going to be below Saddle Lakes, but with the inflation rate is, you can't build anything less than 300.
Okay. And the homes are going to be for single families, not all single families?
Yeah, that's under the R1 restriction.
Okay. And the drainage impact for the neighbors? I know you probably have a pond.
Yeah, and that actually happens at the next meeting where they've submitted their drainage plan, not the subsequent meeting, but the next meeting that they bring the plan to. So they have to refine, once they get approval here, they have to refine their plans to include drainage, and they're restricted on how much water can leave the site with their design. So, and this one seems to have a decent amount of areas where they could handle that water.
Yeah, well, they'll, when they do their infrastructure design, it'll go through our stormwater department as well as, I'm the city engineer as well as my department, to ensure that they're going to control the rate to a rate at or below the existing runoff rates.
What about utilities, the extra electricity and all of that?
Yeah, so and those are companies that are outside of the city, so we deal with sanitary sewer, but electric and then water are handled outside of the city. But those would be different companies.
Well, that, and I have no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who might like to speak? Yes.
Hi, my name's Susan Higgins. I live on 217 South, 325 East, which backs up to this property. I had a question. Is this going to be in the Warsaw city limits or is it in Winona Lake city limits? Because it says Winona Lake for all the project jurisdiction summary.
I assume it's in Warsaw.
Be a typo.
It's
Could you
within
say
the
that
city-
again?
It's within the city limits. I think they referenced a previous plat or something on there.
Okay.
That will be cleaned up before it's recorded.
But it would be in the city limits of
Yes,
Warsaw.
yes.
Okay.
It is.
Oh, yeah, that was on the plat. Those were errors on the draft
Yeah,
plat.
we did see that.
You're correct.
And why are they not getting city water? Why are they drilling wells? And I'd like to know if we know what that's going to be doing to the aquifers for those of us who live by the place to have 89 wells drilled. I mean, we already have very rusty and irony water. And is that going to take the water table down so much that we're going to have to drill new wells?
I have a question towards Justin along those lines. Is Hunter's Ridge, first off, the city does not have our own waters infrastructure. We have Indiana American Water. There's a
Okay.
third-party provider of that. And I am curious, though, if there is water service at the nearby subdivisions. And if there are, we definitely need to consider trying to encourage water service here instead of wells.
Yes, we typically have those discussions with the developer early on. We'll circle back and double check on that, but it's difficult to compel them to.
It's a private
Work
company.
with a private company. We strongly encourage it, and we'll look at it if it's close by. But sometimes Indian American Water can be finicky on who they work with and where they're willing to extend the main to. So we
Okay.
have to look at that.
So
I'm sorry to interrupt you. The Indiana Department of Environmental Management would also evaluate and review this being all on a well and for the very subjects you questioned. to make
Okay,
sure it would
thank
not-
you. And on this map that I picked up, what is Block C? And why is there a little green part circled on it? Because that's like directly, that would be behind my property, so I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, that green odd shape represents a wetland. They presume that's a delineated wetland there, and they're avoiding impacting it is what I assume.
Okay, I was going to say, because there is a wetland pretty close to that area behind me.
So like we just discussed, that would not be a buildable lot. When it's designated as a block, there wouldn't be a home on there then.
Right, okay. And am I right when I was reading this that the back of the new houses is going to have to be 25 feet from the property line? That was in the little part.
Minimum setbacks of 25 feet front, 25 feet rear, 7 feet side.
Okay. And
Side to the lot line, right?
I guess I have a question. Is there any way that they're going to be preventing people from coming over on our property? I mean, I already have a fence up, but I also have a horse that'll bite you if you get in the property, you know, and I also have machinery. I don't want kids running around, so is there anything that's going to be done that way? Or do I just have to make sure and post everything real good?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, the trespassing is not in our line of duties. We can't do
Okay.
anything about that.
And I guess one I had for Mr. Custer, all the piles of limbs and stuff that we see, is that going to be turned into mulch? That's not going to be burned or anything, right?
We have to grind it.
Okay. And I did have a question. When this land got rezoned, I guess, to be in the city or whatever, did the adjacent property owners not have to be notified about that meeting?
I would have thought that would have been part of it.
Because we had,
Annexation.
I had no notification, and I know others didn't either.
When was it annexed?
I saw January it was annexed, and it was brought up in a November meeting for the first reading. Had I known something, I would have been here at those
Yeah,
meetings.
it's, the unfortunate thing is that it is announced publicly in advance. Not everybody gets the public notices.
Right.
In certain circumstances, there actually is a mailing that goes along with that. I don't know if there was in this case or not. I'm not familiar with,
No, we didn't get a mailing for that. I know I didn't.
I don't think for annexations, other than the public announcement and published in the newspaper,
and that's it.
that there is a property owner's individual notification.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somehow it is well-known for the most part, but in this case it wasn't. I'm sorry to hear
Okay, yeah,
that.
because I was asking quite often and nobody seemed to know anything about that, so that was my
Justin,
questions.
Would you
Yes.
review the
Thank you.
history of that for us so we know that at the next meeting? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does that cover the questions, or does someone else like to ask a few? Thank you all. Great questions. I hope we addressed them all. With that, we'll close the meeting to the public. That means we get to talk among ourselves and come to a conclusion on whether we forward this on as a preliminary. Any other further questions or points? We're only doing the preliminary.
It's your turn down there.
My turn?
I would ask Justin, with all the questions and then the responses to those questions, are you still wanting to give a favorable recommendation for the preliminary plat this evening as our city planner?
Yes, I still hold my recommendation. We'll look into that, what was done for the publication, but this is just that first step to approve the subdivision, so I'd still have, my recommendation would be favorable for that, so.
Do we have any kind of idea of the traffic count out there now and what it has to get to for serious consideration about any changes to the road?
I'll look at the last time they did a count. MACOG has numbers on those roads, so I'll take a look at those and see what
So
what
maybe
they're
that's
at.
something you can put down on your list to ask about next time.
I
And
assume-
we absolutely will have to look at traffic as part of the infrastructure review and make sure we have proper turn lanes and
Yeah,
ACL.
the traffic group's got a whole meeting on that.
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely, that'll be reviewed if this goes forward.
And so
with-
Aaron,
And that's a public meeting as well, isn't it, traffic?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
once a month.
Well, that's.
by the way, if that is a concern, the traffic, I think it's Tuesdays?
I forget, but it's on the city calendar. You'll be able to find it.
I'm sorry, Justin,
Wednesdays at 1. It's the, what is it, the third Wednesday?
Wednesday morning or afternoon?
It's in the afternoon at 1.
Okay, they moved it. I've been to a couple of them. They used to be in the
so how do
morning.
they know which one is pertinent to them? Do they call your office?
Well, it is online, I'm sure, but they could call the office if
So it's the
they.
first Wednesday of the month at 1. So the agenda, I think, is just published online. They don't.
Yeah, if you don't have access to it, you can call the city desk, and they'll be doing it. Also, the paper will have releases on that as well.
Free news because I don't take the paper.
May want to start.
That hurt.
It's one of the finer institutions of our country, by
He's
the
grinding
way.
his teeth over here.
Let me,
Can I introduce you to the editor-in-chief?
No, I just, after my dad passed, I just
yeah.
never read it, so.
Let me encourage you to contact any residents out there, including the apartment residents, and show up at a traffic meeting and bring forward the fact that we're looking at many more residents in that area. And due to the fact that we already have a pretty serious traffic problem all the way from New 30 to Chapman Lake Road, that traffic is pretty rough.
Okay, and Aaron, my second question on their behalf is, if they want to know more about the water tables and that, how do they get that information before the meeting so that it's not at the last second, they can digest it ahead of time?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not exactly sure of the process. The developer and his engineering team are going to have to get further along with their design before that can even be
So
discussed.
what time, when do you suggest that they call your office and then get an update on where it stands?
Yeah, you could get a hold of my office. I would suggest we would need, it's going to be at least a few weeks before we would see that. But Mr. Custer, do you know a timeline of when we might?
Yes, if you guys for, not this.
Oh, so it is soon.
Review, but the one after.
Okay.
I don't remember the dates offhand.
Okay, so it is coming up. Some developments, this comes well ahead of the infrastructure. I'm glad to hear. So I would suggest follow up with me within, I can give you a card on my way out here or on your way out, within 2 weeks.
His office is also our office, so.
All right, any other questions or points?
I know when I first started on this commission, I didn't really understand the whole process, but when we approve a preliminary plat, we're just saying that the developer, what he's intending right now meets all of the qualifications for what has to happen in this particular zoning, which is in R1. And then all of the nitty-gritty details come out when he actually submits his final plat, which will have gone through all of these different reviews before we finally see it again. So having you here tonight is very helpful because you raise the concerns and the things that you're thinking of so that he can take those into consideration. And normally the developers that are here listen to the public and, you know, try to address some of those concerns, and, you know, they have them in their minds as they're going forward. And when he has that ready, then it's advertised again. And he's talking about wanting to move ahead with it quickly so that in the next 60 days, he hopes to have that whole process completed and be back before us again. So this is July, so we're looking at August, we're looking at September. So it'll be the second Monday in September at 7 o'clock back here that we would be expecting it to be back on the agenda again. So prior to that, you should be able to go up to the plan office and see everything that's proposed and ask any questions that you have ahead of time. You can always voice those questions again at a public meeting, and, you know, and that's good. But, you know, this way you can get a lot of things answered, and they can check on things and make sure we've got all of our I's dotted and our T's crossed. So that's kind of the process it goes through. So like our president said, sometimes we see one and then it takes like 3 to 6 months before we see the final, and other times it moves right along. So that's kind of the process that we're at right now. So when we approved or not approved tonight, we're just saying that the intent of what he plans to do meets the criteria to fit into that section of the city at this time. Does that help any, maybe? Yeah.
Well said. Well said, Diane. Thank you very much. All right, with that, I think we've concluded the agenda items.
I'll move to adjourn.
No.
So moved, seconded by Jeff.
You will move to what?
Adjourn.
No, we have to.
No, we don't want to
vote.
adjourn. We haven't made a motion on this yet.
Oh, we got to vote on this one.
bad.
You're
I'm way
bad.
ahead of it.
Dang, we talked so long.
Then I appreciate.
All right, we need a motion.
Yeah.
That's what we asked Diane. We thought we were going to get that. Okay.
Well, having said all of that, this does meet those 3 criteria
Right.
for developing a subdivision within an R1 zone. So I would make a motion that we approve so they can go ahead and get some of these other things worked out.
Before I second that, favorable recommendation. Really appreciate your questions again. Mr. Cussy, you don't have to, but do you have any comments you'd like to make based on the questions and comments? You don't have to, but I think that's important. Thank you.
My name's Dale Custer, developer for Superior Developing. Of course, I'm in favor of it. We're trying to help alleviate the housing shortage. The lot sizes are bigger than some of the more recent ones. Most of the lot dimensions are between 80 and over 100 feet. Some of these current ones are 70 feet. So it's going to be a little bit more upscale than some, we think, which should help property values for the neighborhood and things like that. And it's, if you look at my other subdivisions, I try to keep them nice. So I think that Justin's answered most of the questions. And to make it clear, I really appreciate you explaining that. We have to go through a tech review that addresses all those things. I might answer one thing on the water. It's not going to work for water off the Indian American. It's too far away. They don't have enough infrastructure to support it. And so...
So it'll be wells to start with.
Yeah, that's why we picked wells. We prefer city water, but or, oh, not city water. We prefer Indiana American Water. There is no city water. It's a private company. And, but it's.
I'm not surprised to hear that. I appreciate that
Yeah.
you did look into it.
Yeah, we tried. We prefer city water, but it's just not going to work.
As always, Mr. Custer, you're a gentleman. Thank you. I've known you a long
I'll try
time.
not to talk so much this time.
Thank you.
If you have any other questions for me, I'll try to answer.
All right, we've got a
Thank you.
motion, and
And I will now second that motion. Thanks, Diane.
it's been seconded. All those in favor of passing on the preliminary plat?
Aye.
Anyone in dissension? That carries unanimously. Any other matters that'll come before the board? Justin?
Okay, I'll try again. I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Jeff did second it, and we are voting on adjournment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone in dissension? You can stay late after class if you'd like.
Okay.
We're in adjournment. Thank you all.
Give me enough chance.
Yeah, that was funny. When you called on her, I thought, Chris, we were already done. Oh, gosh.
It could be that I'm using a Safari browser doesn't meld with
That's what I was wondering. I don't think
Microsoft.
the app is going to sit out.
It's using
Right now where the wetlands are because.
a browser that was Firefox is pretty popular, and TCU, every time I go back to the main menu to log me out, they said, I don't understand it. So I went to the Windows browser and okay. I was Linux at home, so I was Windows at home. Good browser.
Well, I generally have not had almost